The troubadours and the rich culture they cultivated during the High Middle Ages were located in the Occitanie, or Occitania region, which encompassed much of southern France in addition to parts of northern Italy and Spain at the time. The first troubadours appeared in the 11th century, with William IX of Aquitaine being the first known troubadour. In the 13th century, the troubadour culture largely declined and almost completely disappeared. However, their influence upon the nearby regions and future Western thought and arts remained strong. Due to Occitania's location in between the Muslim Empire, who occupied the Iberian Peninsula at that time, Italy, and the rest of Western Europe, their culture and music incorporated a blend of these surrounding cultures and their ideas. This blending of cultures can even be seen in the continued controversy over the etymology of the word troubadour. Some argue that the word is derived from the Occitan trobar, meaning to invent or to find, which would make sense based on the simple fact that troubadours composed and sang in Occitan. On the other hand, some argue that the word is derived from the Arabic taraba, meaning to sing, which more closely represents the meaning of the word troubadour. Occitania's status as a melting pot of various cultures definitely contributed to the achievements and cultural revolutions of the region. Other than the omnipresent vocal aspect, troubadours also used a variety of musical instruments, including different types of flutes, plucked string instruments such as lutes, harps, and guitars, in addition to some bowed string instruments, mainly the lyra. While instruments were used to an extent, the focus in all troubadour music is clearly on the vocal part, because it contains the lyrical poetry, which was as important, if not more important than the music itself for the troubadours. As such, not much instrumentation was used, and most music was monophonic, containing hardly any harmonization. That being said, the troubadours' music definitely contained beautiful melodic lines and expanded upon prior melodic techniques. The troubadours' music was revolutionary when compared with other medieval music because it was both secular and vernacular. Most music during medieval times was somehow affiliated with religion, because most music either praised God or some higher being and involved discussion of the divine, which can be heard in the heavenly, transcendent feelings often evoked by such medieval music. Unlike this religious majority in music in the Middle Ages, the troubadours' music was secular and did not discuss any institution of religion. In this sense, it already started paving the way for Renaissance ideas, most specifically humanism, because the troubadours' poetry prioritized humans and their ideas and emotions over the divine, as seen in humanism. This valuing of humans and humanity and the subsequent reinterpretation of God is seen more extensively in the Renaissance period, where philosophers such as Erasmus reconsidered the place of God and the relationship between humanity and God. Additionally, other artists began to convey humanist ideas through their work, such as Michelangelo in his The Creation of Adam, which can be seen in the background of the slide. In this painting, God gives Adam the divine gift of life and of intellect. However, many have noticed and suggested that God is sitting on the human brain, potentially revealing that Michelangelo's true message was that the divine gift comes not from God or from a higher power, but rather from within. Such humanist ideas, which originated, at least to a degree, with the secular music of Occitania, still form many modern views and ideologies, especially in the West. The troubadours also defied the status quo in their choice of language. While most literature, including poetry, in Europe had been in Greek or Latin for many centuries prior, the troubadours sang in Occitan, meaning that their singing could be understood by not just intellectual nobility, but also by the common people. This transition to vernacular literature began the long process of a huge overall increase in education amongst the general population, which had been completely limited to the upper class beforehand. Before the troubadours, the very concept of romantic love and romance in general was basically non-existent, because marriage usually served purely political or economic purposes, either to combine houses, gain the title of nobility, or perhaps to gain more workers within a household. The troubadours essentially invented the idea of romance, and started writing about their immense romantic feelings towards others, most commonly towards women. This idealization of women and also the development of the hard-to-get idea amongst women caused women to slowly and subconsciously maintain more respect within society. Whereas before, marriage was not so much an emotional connection, the courtly love ideals created by the troubadours encouraged powerful emotional connections, often in an obsessive, one-way manner, rather than in a mutual, communicative manner, but one without discussion of sexual aspects, but rather purely romantic ones. Furthermore, the ideology of chivalry was created, establishing many social guidelines for men, especially in regards to their behavior towards women. This encouragement of nice, gentlemanly behavior clearly caused significant amelioration of romantic relationships, providing women with a sort of social power to equal men's physical power, and therefore creating greater equality in typical romantic relationships of the time. These constructed ideas of romance and chivalry have completely formed the modern-day view of love, at least in the West, and have provided a greater platform for gender equality. Geoffrey Rodel, like many other troubadours, sang of romantic love and of romantic themes, but he was unique in that he developed this concept of love from afar, which is portrayed in his biographies. Allegedly, Rodel heard mere rumors of the Countess Hodierna of Tripoli, and eventually fell in love with her without ever seeing her or communicating with her. As he wrote and sang about her extensively, the Countess heard of his love, and fell in love with him as well, on the pure basis of his music and poetry. According to legend, Rodel eventually went on a voyage to Tripoli to finally meet her, but became terminally ill on the voyage. When he arrived in Tripoli, he was inches from death, if not already dead. But the Countess ran to him, and they met, and for a moment he was alive once more, until he died minutes later. This idea of love from afar, or falling in love based on mere rumors, descriptions, or in the Countess's case, based on someone's music and poetry, was the epitome of romantic love, because it was love that was not at all formed on the basis of social or political gain, nor was it even formed upon sexual desire, but rather on pure romance and idealization. This idea of love from afar heavily influences later artists and writers, such as Francisco Petrarch, who created the sonnet form based on love from afar, and non-mutual or unrequited love and extreme idealization. Now, one of Geoffrey Rodel's pieces will be played, and the English translation of the lyrics will also be displayed. Other than the degree of greater social power afforded to women by the troubadours' romantic idealization, another fascinating improvement to the status of women in society was the existence of Troubadours. While previously women were almost completely excluded from music, and there were very few female composers and musicians, the troubadour culture accepted the involvement of women in music. Female troubadours were called Troubadours, and while they were fewer in number than troubadours, they still symbolize an interesting step forward for women in society. The following piece is an example of a female musician/composer or Troubadours of the time, Beatrice de Dia. The English translation of the lyrical poetry can be seen on screen.
status, esta chanson que me sia messatus. E voi saberlo, meus bels amics gens, perché vos midst and fers ni tan salvages. No sai si ses orgulls o mals talents, mas aitan plus volinigas messages, qu'en trop d'orgull engrandam mindos gens.
There were many important troubadour influences that potentially shaped the course of history and of the Renaissance, many of which have already been mentioned. First of all, it should be noted that the idea of a troubadour spread to other parts of Europe. It spread to England through Eleanor d'Aquitaine, who married the English king, Henry II, and brought with her many ideas from troubadour culture, including reverence for the arts. Many people, especially her descendants, followed her example, leading to a greater appreciation for the arts in both France and England. In northern France, troubadours were called trouvères, and in Germany they became minnesangers, both of which brought some of the cultural ideas of the troubadours of Occitania to other parts of Europe. Both Dante and Petrarch, key orchestrators to the start of the Italian Renaissance, claimed that they were heavily influenced by the troubadours' work and regarded these troubadours as excellent poets, clearly having high opinions of them and their work. Additionally, as previously touched on, the creation of the idea of romance and idealization of others in a purely romantic sense potentially served as a precursor to other humanist ideas, which were essential to the Renaissances of all European countries. The vernacular nature of the troubadours' writing also allowed education and understanding to become more widespread, allowing society to progress further intellectually. Unfortunately, the troubadour culture of Occitania all but disappeared due to the Albigensian Crusade in the 13th century. The Albigensian Crusade was an attempt to eliminate Catholicism, a specific Christian movement of the time, and eventually resulted in the less advanced, at the time, northern France obtaining full authority and control over the south of the Occitania region. This alone mostly destroyed the troubadour culture, and the remnants were later destroyed by the Black Plague of the 14th century, which ravaged through Europe. While the troubadour culture may have disappeared long ago, the legacy of their ideas and revolutionary concepts is unending. The troubadours completely formed the later and modern Western perspective on love and romance, completely transforming such an important part of life. They also laid the foundation for humanism and for other aspects of the Renaissance, which further revolutionized Europe and its ideologies.